avoided the footmarks printed in gold, avoided them as if they had been covered by invisible feet. Monty was right. Everything was gold, and it shone, it shone. Dust from the terrible mines of Nub, whence the convict miners never returned, lay thickly scattered over the rock floor. The walls of rock were plastered with gold leaf, as high as the low ceiling, and upon the ceiling itself, on a background of deep blue colour, was traced in gold the form of Nut, goddess of night, her long arms outspread across an azure sky of golden stars. The table of offerings was decorated with gold in barbaric patterns, and the saucer which held the burnt pastille of incense was of gold, crudely designed but beautiful. Cloth of gold, soft as old linen, draped a coffin in the centre of the room, and hid the conical object on the coffin's lid. On a sudden half-savage impulse I lifted the covering, with a pang of fear lest the fabric should drop to pieces. But it did not. Its limp yet heavy folds fell across my feet, as I stood looking at the wonderful thing it had concealed. There was no sarcophagus of stone. The doors leading to the rock tomb were not large enough to have admitted one. Instead, there was an extraordinarily high, narrow coffin or mummy case, richly gilded and decorated with intricate designs different from any I had seen in the museum at Cairo. The top of the case represented the figure of a woman, with a smiling golden face, painted lips and hair. But the strangeness and wonder were under the long eyelids, and in the woman's hands. The slanting eyes had each an immense cabochon emerald set for its iris, set round with brilliant stones like diamonds, curiously cut. And the carved, gilded hands of wood, with realistic fingers, wearing rings, were clasped round a pyramid of gold. This it was which had betrayed its conical shape through the drapery of gold cloth. The opening in the miniature pyramid was not concealed. There was a little door, guarded by a tiny golden sphinx, and on the neck of the sphinx, suspended by a delicate chain, was a bell. "It is to call the spirit of the Queen, if a profane touch should violate her tomb," Fenton said, dreamily. He was beginning to look like a man hypnotized. Perhaps it was the close air, with its lingering perfume of 2,000 years ago. Perhaps it was something else, more subtle, something that we could all feel, as one feels the touch of a living hand that moves under a cloak. No one spoke for an instant. I think we half expected the bell to ring. Then Fenton said, "Monty, you and Mrs. O'Brien must choose which is to have the privilege of finding out the secret of the Golden Pyramid. The Duffer and I want it to be one of you." "Oh no, not I!" cried Monty, almost angrily. "Nor I," Biddy firmly echoed. "Duffer, the papers were yours. Will you—" Anthony began. "No, it was your faith in the mountain that brought us to it," I reminded him. "It ought to be you." If it ought to be any of us," Monty broke in, with a little breathless catch in her voice. But what do you mean?" Anthony turned an odd, startled look upon the girl. "I hardly know what I mean. Only I couldn't touch anything here. They are hers. They've been hers for 2,200 years. I never thought I should feel like this. I'd rather drop dead this minute than try to take that little pyramid out of those golden hands. They've clasped it so long. She wanted so much to keep the secret, Anthony. This is the strongest feeling that ever came into my heart, except love for you. This feeling that we have no right, that it would be monstrous to rob this queen." "It wouldn't be robbing," Anthony said heavily. "We have the right—" "Oh, I wonder," Biddy whispered. "What would become of museums if everybody felt as you suddenly feel, or think you feel?" Fenton went on. "If it were wrong to open tombs, the best men in Egypt—" "Not wrong, perhaps," Monty explained. "But oh, I'm sure you understand. I'm sure in your hearts you both, you men, feel just as we do now we're in this wonderful secret place. That something forbids—I don't know whether it's something in ourselves or outside, but it's here. It says, 'No, whatever others do, you cannot do this thing.' If you didn't feel it, you would have taken the pyramid out of those poor hands, and tried to tear off the rings, and open the coffin itself to get at the mummy. But you haven't, either of you. You don't want to do it. You can't! I dare one of you to tell me it's only for Biddy and me that you've kept your hands off." "We've come a long way, and have done a good deal to find this secret that we expected Egypt to give us," I said, dully, instead of answering her challenge. Monty had no argument for me. She turned to Anthony. "The secret you expected Egypt to give?" she echoed. And hasn't Egypt given you a secret?" "Yes," said Anthony. "Egypt has given us a secret, the greatest secret of all. But is there a but? I wonder if that isn't the only secret which one can open and learn by heart, without breaking the charm?" Biddy seemed to be speaking to herself, but we heard. "The secret of love goes on forever being a secret, doesn't it, the more you find out about it, just as the world and its beauty grows greater and more wonderful the higher you climb up a mountain? But other secrets, you find them out and they're gone, like a bright soap bubble. Nothing can mend broken romance." "If we didn't touch anything here, what a memory this would be to carry away," Monny said. "Don't you remember, Anthony, my saying once how I love to dream of all the beautiful lost things, hidden beneath the sea and earth, never to be found while the world lasts, and stuck miserably under glass cases? You said you felt the same in some moods. I love those moods." I feel so about things in general," Anthony admitted. "It was my romantic side you appealed to. Have you a better side?" "No better, but more practical. This isn't things in general. It's a thing particular, personal and definite. If we should be quixotic enough not to take what we've earned the right to take, we should be called fools. Instead of claiming our half, the Egyptian government would get all." "Let it!" Monny cried. "A government is a big, cold, soulless impersonality. It could never know the thrill that's in our blood this wonderful minute, or miss the thrill if it were destroyed. Do you mind being called a fool, Anthony? And you, Lord Ernest?" Anthony was silent, but something made me speak. "I don't mind. You know I've always been a duffer." "Our future largely depends on this," Fenton persisted, with a conscientious wish to persuade us, and himself. "I believe it does," Monny strangely agreed with him. "What do you mean?" Anthony's voice was suddenly sharp with some emotion, which sounded more like anxiety than anger. "Do you mean that if Ernest Borrow and I insist on our rights to whatever treasure is hidden here, you and Mrs. O'Brien will think less of us?" "Not less. Nothing you could do would make us think less, after all that has happened to us together. But could it ever be as it has been, as beautiful, as sweet, with all the dearest kind of romance in our thoughts of you? You see, you have the glory of finding the secret. Queen Candace saved it for you. She wouldn't give it to such a man as Colonel Corkran. She knew he wouldn't respect her. Maybe she hoped you would. I seem to hear her saying so. All this gold, and the treasure we haven't seen, is hers. It's been hers for more than 2,000 years. Why should we steal it? We aren't a horrid, cold government. It won't be our fault, whatever a government may choose to do. She'll know that, and so shall we. Besides, we can beg to have the tomb kept like this for a great shrine of the Marrow. Our memory of this place can't have the glamour torn away, whatever happens. Nothing sordid will come between it and us, as it would if— Why, after all, where's the great difference between opening the coffin of a woman dead thousands of years ago, or a few months? Supposing people wanted to dig up Queen Elizabeth to see what had been buried with her? Or Napoleon? What an outcry there'd be all over the world! This poor queen is defenceless, because her civilization is dead too. Could you force open the lid of her coffin, Lord Ernest, and take the jewels off her neck?" "Just now I feel as if I couldn't," I confessed, humbly. "And you, Anthony? What if I died, and asked to have the jewels I loved, because you'd given them, put on my body, to lie there till eternity, and—" "Don't," Anthony cut her short. "There are some things I can't listen to from you. And some things you can't do. You may think you could, but go ahead and take the golden pyramid out of those golden hands, if you can." "I shall not take it," said Anthony. "I shall never take it now. You must know that." "I'm not saying I shan't go on loving you if you go against me. I shall love you always. I can't help that. But—" "That's it, the but. Let it all go. At least we've had the adventure, and we've got love. I don't want the treasure now, or the secret. I give up my part in them forever." "For me?" "Yes, for you, but there's something more. Another reason?" "I think so. Frankly, it isn't all for you. Only you've made me feel it. Without you I might have felt it, but too late. If there's a drop of Egyptian blood in my veins, why, yes, it must be that, telling me the same thing that you have told. This Egyptian queen may lose her treasure, and must lose her secret, but it won't be through me." "And because you wouldn't steal them, she has given you the secret and the treasure, the best of both, with her royal blessing," Biddy said. "This is what Ferlini's papers, and the legends, really meant for you and Ernest. Everything that's happened, not only in Egypt, but in our whole lives, has been leading